All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Assuming everyone who's here everyone who is planning on coming is here. Very pleased to be presenting the second in our Urban Library Leaders Forum as part of the Urban Libraries group of the New Jersey Library Association, and very pleased today to be welcoming someone who I know very well and I had the opportunity to work with her for a number of years at Newark Public Library, Yesenia López. How are you, Yesenia?
Good, good. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So you are home. You're broadcasting live from your home. Is that right?
I am. So with that, if you see a 8-year-old come in here to say hello, it's his thing. I let him know that I'm going live. I let him know that I'm on, and he always has to just kind of make an appearance. So if you see him, you know what's happening.
So I think all of us, as a result of this, as a result of COVID, we've all become a little more understanding.
Right.
So I am at work. So if you see some random librarian come running in,
right.
So, will he become a participant? Oh, somebody's asking if you're
he may.
Who's to say? Who knows?
Right.
So, Yesenia, why don't you give a brief introduction and then go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and about the center.
Sure. So, my introduction is that I am the director of the New Jersey Hispanic Research and Information Center at the Newark Public Library.
Congratulations, you've been promoted.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been director since about 2017 when Jeffrey joined us. But I've been with the HRIC since its establishment, and in my presentation, you'll hear a little bit about me and how, my role what my role was in establishing the HRIC. So other than that, I've been with them, and that was 2002, right? I started with them right out of college, right out of Rutgers, Newark, and I've been there ever since. A little bit about me personally, I'll get into that in my presentation as well. But I'm just really happy to be here. I'm happy that we're able, to offer these programs, whether it be from home or from work. And I appreciate, the invitation. So. I'm just gonna run into my presentations. It pretty much gives a nice history, of of the establishment of the HRIC, where we are now, and hopefully what we would like to see in the future. So again, thank you for inviting me, for sure. I was happy to see the previous one, and happy to see that I get to follow that up, right? So. Thank you also to the New Jersey Library Association, the Urban Library Section, for hosting the series. I want to give a shout out to the Newark Public Library, of course, including our new director, Jocelyn Dixon, our Assistant Director of Special Collections, Ingrid Bentancur, for all of her knowledge, help, and support. I'd like to make sure and include our HRIC staff for their amazing work and assistance always, and my colleagues at the Newark Public Library for all of their support and assistance, and keeping the HRIC relevant. I want to give a special thanks and a shout out to the Friends of the HRIC and their founding member, Dr. Olga Jimenez de Wagenheim. Let me just share my screen real quick. I have a presentation to offer. Who can share? Me. Let's see, who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? Only me. Okay. So I'm gonna share some sound. Hopefully that'll come out all right. And can you see this?
I can see it.
There we go. Perfect. All right. So I'm gonna get into the Newark Public Library. The library has a long history of service to immigrants. The John Cotton Dana from 1902 until his death in 1929 believed, unlike his contemporaries, that the library belonged to his community and it should be relevant to the daily lives of its citizens. Almost 100 years later, the Newark Public Library has held this belief, and it continues to be relevant to the daily lives of the communities it serves. Today, the Hispanic community the library serves accounts for about 36% of the population in Newark, 20% of New Jersey's population. And in fact, in New Jersey, Hispanics are now the majority minority. But what some may not realize is that this community has had an impact on the state's everything, right? Agriculture, politics, education, communities, business, law and politics, and so on. And I'm sharing a couple examples of Latinos in New Jersey. We have in the upper left, we have Angel Quiñones, who ran for council in Perth Amboy. Looks like it was sometime around the 1980s. Then we have Gabriel Cole on the right, who worked with migrant laborers in southern New Jersey and really advocated for getting them the proper health care they need. And then we have Jersey City's very own Elio Rivera. Elio Rivera has passed away, but he is pictured here. I don't know if you could see somewhere in the middle. He was a community activist, and here I'll speak about him a little bit later. Hopefully you'll hear an audio clip from his interview, but pictured here is a street cleaning event that they were participating in. So today, in the late 70s, in staying relevant to the communities it serves, the Newark Public Library recruited Latino librarians, started to create new outreach programs designed to connect with Latino population, and expanded its Spanish language collections and resources. In the late 80s, the library made a substantial commitment to the growing Latino population of the city with the creation of La Sala Hispanoamericana as an educational, informational, and cultural resource for recent Latino immigrants. And through partnerships with Latino community-based organizations for over 30 years, the Sala Hispanoamericana has offered a wide range of programs and services. In 2001, a successful partnership with community members was created to establish the three-tiered New Jersey Hispanic Research and Information Center, which incorporated an expansion of La Sala Hispanoamericana. I'm just gonna pause right there to say, that's a really long title. New Jersey Hispanic Research and Information Center. And usually I follow that with at the Newark Public Library. So throughout my talk, I will refer to it as HRIC, NJHRIC, or something like that. You know, that's what I'm talking about. So today, right, the Newark Public Library's Sala houses the largest collection of Spanish language resources of any public library in New Jersey. And they provide the most extensive concentration of Hispanic programming by a non-Hispanic organization in the state. For the past 20 years, the Newark Public Library has focused Latino celebrations and exhibits on the various Latino communities of New Jersey. These programs kick off in conjunction with the Hispanic Heritage Month, which is September 15th, and consist of a series of events and accompanying exhibit that is scheduled throughout the fall. We do not stop on October 15th. Additionally, we continue to offer Spanish language programming throughout the entire year. These programs offer people from different backgrounds the opportunity to learn about distinct nationality groups and cultures. And for your information, all of the programs are presented free of charge and are open to the general public. Pictured here are examples of 2009's Hispanic Heritage Month celebration was on the theme of a journey from ancient times, Peruvians in New Jersey. A picture of an exhibit and one of the programs that we held. On the right, we have Ayer, Hoy y Siempre, Mujeres en la Literatura. And this was a really interesting program because our author on the left, the young lady, had this book being published and released, and she wanted to host a book launch at the library. So she gave me a call and said, you know, can we do this, and how can we make that happen? It just so happened that when we had that conversation, I had met with a friend of lady on the right, Marita Martelli, who had a similar request with a new book launch. So I said, you know what, let's make this happen. We'll do it in the summer. And we came up with Ayer, Hoy, Siempre, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, you know, Women in Literature. It was a wonderful program and in 2019. And On that same note, another example of a program that was brought forth by the community was a panel discussion on the 25th anniversary of the 1974 Puerto Rican riots that happened in Branch Brook Park in Newark, New Jersey. And in 1999, on that anniversary, Dr. Wagenheim received an invitation from then she was Director of Multilingual Collections, Ingrid Betancourt, to moderate the panel discussion. But when Dr. Wagenheim researched the topic, she only found a folder of newspaper clippings on the subject. As a result of this non-existent archive experience, they began, Ingrid and Olga began discussions about the necessity and the desire to create a safe haven for this community's history before more of it continues to get lost. In the year 2000, the year right after that, Dr. Wagenheim organized a class titled Documenting Your Community. And I may have skipped that. Dr. Wagenheim at the time was a history professor at Rutgers, Newark, when she was invited. So she designed a class right after, the year after that, called Documenting Your Community around the topic of the Newark Puerto Rican riots. Now, the class did extensive research on the subject, completing several interviews with individuals who were around and or involved in some matter in the mediation sessions that were held as a result of the riots. And as a class project, the students organized a conference inviting the interviewees to discuss the topic. So today, the students' research materials, including the historic interview transcripts and audio files, the conference poster boards that were created, and the photos are now all available at the Puerto Rican Community Archive of the HRIC. And just for some of you who may not know, that picture on the right is a tape recorder. It is what I was using when I did my oral history research as a student. I just wanted to let you know. In about 2001, a year later, Dr. Wagenheim formed the Friends of the HRIC. And at the time, they were known as the Organizing Committee. These were a group of volunteers who had an interest in seeing the PRCA come to fruition, the Puerto Rican Community Archive come to fruition. The Organizing Committee raised funds to hire someone who was bilingual, who was able and willing to travel throughout the state, and who had a master's degree in library science. They did a search for a couple of months and they couldn't find anybody to fit that description. So instead they hired me. And I didn't have the degree, but I'm bilingual. And because I was from Camden, New Jersey, shout out to Camden, I was already comfortable with traveling throughout the state. I was doing this regularly anyway. And more importantly than that was really my own passion to see this archive of my community come to fruition, right? I'm going to share a little bit about me to see why I needed this to happen, right? My parents were born and raised in, my parents were born in Puerto Rico, but they met, married, and had 2 kids while living in Paterson, New Jersey. They then moved to Camden, New Jersey, and had 2 more kids. That's myself and my little brother, my big little brother. And we were born and raised in Camden, New Jersey. And as you can see the yearbook photos, right? I was a great student. These are my junior high. I went into the yearbooks for this. In the junior high, I was the best of the best in honor roll, National Honor Society. I was top 10 when I graduated junior high. I was in band. My brothers called me one of the biggest nerds in the family. And in high school, my high school pictures on the left here, you see underneath it has a bunch of little, I don't know if you can read it, but it has descriptions of the different activities that you were involved in, different sports and activities you were involved in. So I was really active, and I think I was a good student, right? But this is how I felt about history. I just couldn't take history class because it was just so boring to me. I didn't see myself reflected in it. I didn't get it, and I just couldn't take it. However, fast forward, I went on to attend Rutgers University in Newark, and I tell everybody that I had to pay to learn about my history, right? Up until school, I didn't know anything about Puerto Rico except that it wasn't a state, right? I didn't know what a Commonwealth was and why it was a Commonwealth, but I just knew it wasn't a state. So I, excuse me, I learned about where my family comes from then. I learned about people who look like me. I learned about people who look like my aunts and my family. I learned what is a Commonwealth, like I said. And then I took a course called Documenting Your Community with Dr. Wagenheim. And I began to realize that we need to document our own history. You know, I gained some oral history experience as I took her class. I did my first oral history interview and researched an organization's history. And for this, we were tasked to go into your own communities. At the time, I was living in Paterson, New Jersey. But I wanted to highlight, I had an interest in my hometown. So I wanted to highlight an organization that was around, that was in Camden, New Jersey. And that's what I did. I traveled to do that. It was a great experience just learning about organizations from the community I came from. And then during an independent study, I was tasked with researching an oral history and performing an oral history with eyewitnesses of the 1968 Puerto Rican riots in Paterson, New Jersey. Yet, I still had no experience in archives, nor on how to conduct a survey. But the library hired me anyway, and they sent me to train for the position with seasoned archivists Nelida Perez and Pedro Juan Hernandez at the Center for Puerto Rican Studies in Hunter College, an almost 30-year-old archive at the time, documenting the Puerto Rican diaspora in New York and throughout the US. And they trained me on how to conduct a survey of the Puerto Rican communities in New Jersey. I then gained on the job experience as I completed the survey of New Jersey's Puerto Rican communities. I met with people from all over the state. I found that Puerto Rican communities in areas I hadn't known about. I found that Latino riots happened statewide. I found that there was no other institution documenting this history, right? So upon graduation from LIU in 2007, I realized that my thoughts about history began to change. It wasn't the Charlie Brown want anymore. I now started to realize in my undergrad that I can do history, right? And by the time I graduated Long Island University, I realized I wanted to do history. And now that I'm making it my career, being as though I was the first Latino archivist when I graduated, I realized, you know, who else is gonna do this? And hopefully we're working on who else. So the survey, back to the survey was conducted in 3 phases, focusing each phase on Southern, Central, and Northern New Jersey, as shown in the counties above. During the survey, I met with organizations and individuals throughout the state to identify and inventory their archival materials relating to the Puerto Rican diaspora in New Jersey. The survey aimed to identify if the community did indeed have historical records, the dates of those records, what types of materials existed, and their record holders' interest in donating the collection if a repository existed, and the condition of the materials. And lastly, of course, their collection size. If we were going to collect these materials that I'm identifying, we needed to know how much space to dedicate to that. So the survey results are shown in this map, right? We identified about 2,000 cubic feet of materials. But what I want people to really pay attention to is that the larger numbers here do not necessarily reflect a larger Puerto Rican community presence than others. They actually just reflect where organizations that were surveyed had large amounts of organizational records that were never discarded. There were a total of 26 organizations surveyed and 51 individuals, with only a handful of individuals who weren't interested in donating their collection. Pause again just to say that this is a survey of the Puerto Rican communities of New Jersey, and although New Jersey may be fairly small to other states, it is one person traveling up and down the state identifying these things. So in reality, these numbers are much larger. I am sure of it, and indeed have proven that as we started to collect and gain materials that had not been identified. So fast forward, right, in 2006, at the completion of the survey, we began officially collecting materials. We quickly filled our storage space 3 times over, and we are currently over capacity again. These are what I like to call good problems, right? To date, we have about 60 historically valuable collections that reflect the Puerto Rican diaspora in New Jersey. Pictured here, we have Crystal Izquierdo, who was an archival assistant working with me probably throughout all of her undergrad years. She worked as an archival assistant and assisted me in collecting the papers from Mr. Elio Rivera there in Jersey City, New Jersey. And on the right, we have a photo of Luz Sandoval and Devin Miller. These are Rutgers University Public History interns who interned with me. I think it was 2019 or 2018. But I share this to make a point of how valuable interns, archival assistants, and volunteers are to processing and working with the archival collections. As the library, most libraries, we just do not ever have enough resources. So their work in getting this done is really how, I give them a lot of credit for all of that they did for us. So now, back to the survey, one common reply to my request for historical papers from community members was that they didn't have any historical records, right? There's some of us who tend to keep everything that they find, right? They're keeping ticket stubs, they're keeping flyers, brochures, handouts, newspaper clippings. And then you have some people who don't keep anything, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a history to tell, right? So I started a running list of these individuals who may not have historical papers to donate, but did have a history to tell. And 2 years later, the first HRIC-driven Latino Oral History Project began. That was the Latino Life Stories collection. We later added the Justice Project and the Activist Voices and Latino Immigrant Experience collections to the Latino Oral History collection. So this collection, the Latino Oral History, is the backbone of the Hispanic Reference Collection. It includes, the Hispanic Reference Collection includes local newspapers, and pictured here, I wanted to make sure and point out that we are collecting even during the pandemic. Thanks to Don Irving Linares, pictured on the left side of this picture. He ran the local newspaper called El Nuevo Coquí for over 30 years. And he's finished, he wrapped up, the paper is not being published anymore. And now that he is considering moving out of state, he realized, I have all of these newspapers, what am I gonna do with them? So luckily, he was aware of the HRIC and the preservation of the historical records we do in the archive. So he contacted us and asked if we'd be interested in accepting the donation. And of course we did, right? I sent our archival assistant out there. I sent our archivist Huber out there. And then I joined him and filled, let me get back a little bit. I joined him and filled my car. I was just trying to show the photo here in the background to see my car full of boxes. This was only half of them, but they eventually will join the digital collection. They'll be added to the library's digital collections. And for that, let me see if I could switch my screen here. I wanted to go through and give you a quick tour of our digital collections for people to visit. So here it is, and this one is a very simple URL, digital.npl.org. Come here and you will see samples of our collections. Click on Browse NPL Collections. You'll see we have the Charles F. Cummings, New Jersey Information Center for records on Essex County, New Jersey, and Newark. You have the Special Collections Department for their fine and graphic art collections, and then the New Jersey Hispanic Research and Information Center. If we open that up, you'll see here, these are collections that are reflective of the Latino immigrant experience in Newark. So it was pretty limited initially in what collections we were going to digitize, but we now have this background, ability to go ahead and add to this platform. And we have indeed done so, right? These are a list of the digitized collections we have to date, but I want to point out that we have La Hispanidad newsletter collection. La Tribuna newspaper collection, and La Tribuna's photograph collection. So in addition to all of the newspapers that La Tribuna donated, by the way, we have a complete run of all of its papers. In addition to that, they donated the photographs that they used as they were writing their articles. So we have that collection available as well. And where once, of course, we have the time and the resources, the collection of El Nuevo Coqui newspaper will be as well. I also wanted to point out our Latino oral history collection and just explain a little bit about the difference, excuse me, the difference between this Latino oral history collection and the Latino oral history collection that was performed under the HRIC. This collection is a collection of interviews performed by Dr. Wagenheim and her students. As I mentioned, she had been sending her students out into the community before the HRIC was established, and then after she continued, and those materials have now been donated to the archive and have been added to the digital website. So you can see here we have full transcripts of lots of interviews. This is upwards of 100. Now, fast forward to the Latino Oral History Collection at the Newark Public Library. We have, I'm just gonna show you how to get to it because it's when it comes to the website, nothing's really easy to navigate on the Newark Public Library website. But if you come here, go to mouse over to collections and services, and you will see that it is a pop-up out of the NJHRIC. So if you open here, you'll see these are oral histories that were done under the HRIC. So where the other collection was performed under Dr. Wagenheim supervision, this is now the Research Center hosting these oral histories. These are the collections that I mentioned: the Justice Project, Latino Life Stories, Activist Voices, Latino Immigrant Experience in Newark. And I'm just gonna open here the Latino Life Stories. Once you open, you have a description of the collection and some interviewees, their photos and talking points that were discussed in the interview. So what is interesting about all of these is that some of our Latino oral history interviewees have also been archival donors. I mentioned before Elio Rivera from Jersey City. We also have an oral history with him. And for all of our projects done under the HRIC, we have a photo and they each have their own sort of landing page, right? So Elio Rivera, you're gonna find a photo of the interviewee, a bio of them, and here we got audio clips of the interviewees. So I wanted to share Elio Rivera, where he discusses the first apartment that he and his family lived in after migrating to New Jersey. I call this the Coldwater Flat clip. Let me see if this plays all right.
We used to live in a cold, flat, an apartment. And remember, there was 8 of us, okay? It's not easy. As a matter of fact, where we live, it was like a 4-story apartment building. Okay, 1 apartment on each side. The bathroom that you use was shared by the 2 families, the left and the right. In order to take a bath, you have one of those marble tubs right there in the kitchen. Okay, so it was a heck of an experience.
Right. So there you'll hear audio clip and followed by the verbatim transcript after that. What I want to point out is, like I mentioned, Elio Rivera is also an archival donor. So there is a description of his collection. We just gotta navigate to get there. So I showed you on the last page how you mouse over collections and get to the NJHRIC. Once you click that, you'll come here to the NJHRIC main page. And soon enough, we'll be able to get rid of this big yellow box once quarantine is over. We don't need a big warning about our services and we could go back to normal. But if you scroll down to the Puerto Rican Community Archive and open archival collection descriptions, you'll come to, again, like the digital archive, our list of repositories. Open up the Puerto Rican Community Archive and 46 collections. Here you're gonna have, so you may not know who Adela Coca was, you may not know what's in her collection, but you have an abstract of what's in there. So you have an idea of what is found in those collections. And I'm just gonna come on over to Elio Rivera. So you see, Elio Rivera was born in Ay Bonito, Puerto Rico, and moved to New Jersey when he was 14 years old. Mr. Rivera joined the PACO, Puerto Ricanos Asociados for Community Organization Agency in 1970 and served as the executive director since 1976. He's a former deputy mayor of the Jersey, well, he was, of Jersey City, and currently serves as a member of the Hudson. This needs to be updated, but he served as a member of the Hudson County Board of Trusts and Freeholders, representing the 4th District. He's also founder and president of Liberty Academy Community Charter School. So here you're gonna find abstracts, and if you're interested in viewing any of those resources, you would simply get in touch with our archivist to see how we can make that happen. So let me get back to my presentation. Here you go. So I just wanted to share that these are just a few flyers from virtual programs that were held this summer. And this summer was really like, unlike any other summer, of course, right, for the very obvious, but we don't usually do as much programming in the summer. We you know, it's time for vacation during the summer. So, however, this year, because we were all homebound, I mean, we really just got on the ball and started virtual programming. And like I mentioned, this is only a few of the programming. We've never put out so much programming in the summer at the Newark Public Library, but now here we have it. And I mean, all over. We were really like, who wants to be, you know, who wants to go live? Who's available? Let's, you know, let's make a program out of it. We have a program on the census. Of course, we had one on COVID, trying to reach our undocumented community. This is another one on census and the race. And then we've had, this one was really interesting, NPL at Home. That was a series created within the Special Collections Department. And this was a nice tutorial basically to let give researchers a tip on how to navigate. As I mentioned, it really isn't that easy, but how to navigate and find resources already at their disposal where they don't have to come into the library. Again, virtual programming, we had bilingual story times. Aurelia and some community members participated by submitting community story times. And then this program was actually scheduled to happen when we shut down, right? It was, I think it was originally scheduled the end of March. But of course, it had to be canceled for the obvious reason of COVID and the shutdown. So fast forward a couple months later, I got, you know, we got in touch with some of the participants and asked to see if they would be willing to host a virtual program. And so initially the program was something like 8 people. It was a lot of panelists. So we broke it up into two parts, right? And part 1 was on the scenes and part 2 was behind the scenes. Where we interviewed with Latinas who work in the film industry, either behind or on the scene. Going forward, we are definitely intending to continue this virtual programming. One thing we found, or one thing that I've definitely found to be a plus on virtual programming is that when you hold an in-person program, we didn't always record the program and make that information available. If we held a program in person and you didn't make it, you missed it, right? You might catch some video clips of somebody might have recorded and posted online, and you might catch some photos that way. But with this programming, like today, you know, I heard that we're streaming live to YouTube. So once today's program is over, let's say you have 50 views on it, by next week, that number could go up to 100, 200 views. So now we're essentially, and we're reaching audiences across the world. You know, this is a sort of bittersweet that we have it, you know, because of the advantages. Of course, I'm I'm old school, right? And I'd rather see you, Jeffrey, and hug you than to see you through this to see you through this screen, you know. So that's for me it's a little tough, you know, but it has its advantages in definitely sort of the reach. The other is that, of course, not everybody, you know, that has access to the World Wide Web. Of course, with this pandemic, we found that was available and able to offer to more people. But there's still that sort of gap. So once we go back to normal, I spoke about it with our colleagues, and I think we're all in agreement that we should continue to be able to offer these programs, record them in person and offer them online. So what I have here is shown Gente y Cuentos, hace que la literatura sea más divertida. This is a program held every Saturday. It started last week, but there are still slots available if someone wants to register, and they are going to be held through the end of November. It's an hour-and-a-half discussion with a moderator who reads out a short story and then leads a discussion afterwards. It's different than a book club because there's no reading to be done beforehand. In fact, the moderator sent me the copy of the short story that was going to be shared in last week's program. And I read the short story, was ready for the discussion, but I definitely did not understand it as much as when she read it out loud to me. So going forward, I will not be reading the short stories before the program starts. But it's a really great program to just sort of take a step back, have a discussion with some people on the topic. And again, there's still room to register. There's still spaces left if you want to register, you just have to follow that link. And then, of course, our opening reception. So as I mentioned, opening reception or Latino celebration usually runs in along with, starts in conjunction with Hispanic Heritage Month celebrations on September 15th. We just haven't been able to get that that deadline, you know, because of the obvious reasons of not being able to plan this with enough time. There were so many questions and ifs up in the air about what we can do, right? So in any case, it's on next Wednesday, October 14th at 6 o'clock, opening reception by the dope Rosa Clemente is going to be our keynote speaker. If you haven't heard or know about Rosa, please look her up. She's going to be speaking to us about the power of community activism. And it's going to wrap up with a performance by a spoken word performance by our local poet, writer, activist, Puerto. So, and then there's definitely more programs to come, you know, going forward. We definitely want to expand our virtual programming or continue virtual programming. And we need to increase our social media presence is what we realized over the summer and through this shutdown. So as you can see, all of our flyers are now marked with our, you know, follow us on so that people are made aware. And then this is what makes me happy, right? So as we are today, if you've been to the Newark Public Library and you're familiar with it, you know that the Sala Hispanoamericana is there on the first floor, but if you need to do research in the archive, you have to make well, everyone has to make an appointment, but you have to be escorted to a portion of the library that is not accessible to the public, right? You have to be escorted by a staff member to get to the archive. So we are physically located in different places. And then we have our storage being located, you know, being housed in another building. So looking forward, we are re-envisioning our space and resources. You know, we also have staff separated. We have La Sala Hispanoamericana staff, we have the Puerto Rican Community Archive staff. And with this new vision, we have everything in one place. As I mentioned before, the Friends of HRIC organized this HRIC to establish it. But they didn't have this sort of piecemeal, one here and one over there idea. They had a vision where something like this, someone could come in and say, wow, you know, this is available. All this information is available on Latinos in New Jersey. And we could find it all in one place. So here are just some drafts from the architects where this would be our opening space. Here we have low open stacks. We have a meeting room, space cut out for the archive in the back, and public computers. And this HRIC Kids Space idea is one of my favorites. So right now in the Sala Panamericana, the kids have a corner area with Spanish language books, but there's no space for them. It's a regular, you know, conference table with 4 chairs, and that's all that they have. So looking into the future and hopefully getting the construction started on this new space will be the way for the future, and giving our kids their own space within the HRIC. So I probably went through that faster than I intended, as usual. But that is what I have to present. I'm gonna stop sharing. There we go. And open the floor up for, let's chat, let's talk. If you have any questions.
So thank you, Yesenia. You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Great. It was great seeing that, and it was a great reminder for me personally. Again, so happy to have you here and to see you again. And I'm really pleased to see that the plans for the renovation are going forward. We have some questions that came in, and there were some questions that were submitted in advance, and we have a little bit of time left. So I'll go through the questions for you, starting with, you sort of addressed this with your own experience, but one of our viewers asked if you could share any stories that you have about local prominent Hispanic leaders in the community who have contributed to the recruitment specifically of Hispanic librarians in the New Jersey area, particularly in the area of archives and digitization. If so, can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, my own experience was exactly that. Community, I feel like the community created me. They created me to, you know, rescue and preserve and make their records available. But along those same lines, I do the same thing. You know, we go out and we do outreach, and definitely a lot of community members, once they hear and realize that librarianship is an option, is a thing, right? You know, yeah, you can be a librarian. That's a career. You know, they're like, wow, let's tell our students about it. You know, and so I'm always being invited. And I say but we're always being invited because my colleague Huber does the same thing. Huber is one of those stories, actually. Huber came into the archive as an archival assistant. I apologize. He came in as an intern, actually. Huber came in as an intern. He worked out really well. He proved that he can do the job, but he had his own personal interest in archiving. And most interns that I get in there, they don't even know about anything about archives, right? They just know that they have to do this internship for a history class, right? So they're always really amazed at the fact that that is a thing. So when Huber came in, he had an interest. We hired him as an archival assistant. He went on to, I encouraged him to go to graduate school the same way Ingrid and Olga pulled my ear and so then demanded I go to graduate school to get this librarian degree. He didn't have to be that coerced that hard. He already had an interest. So he did go to graduate school and he became a librarian and working with us as an archivist, I think now for at least the last year. On that same note, we do the same thing. You know, it's basically a lot of outreach. So the answer is yes, there are community members who do recruit, you know, Latino librarians. And by just letting our youth know that that's an option, right? You ask the youth, people want to be cops. I want to be a cop. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a doctor. You know, I never really heard a kid say, I want to be a librarian, except maybe my kid. But you know, you never really hear a kid say, I want to grow up and be a librarian, you know. And with my outreach, that's pretty much what I try to do. You know, I want people to say, I want to be a librarian. I want to be a historian. I want to rescue my community's history. You know, that's definitely our goal.
Well, you know, kids want to be what they see as cool, right? So that's, you often see cops and lawyers and things like that, but you, Jesse, make librarianship seem cool. So of course your kid wants to be a librarian.
Thank you. You know, what I tell him is that, you know, I'm just not just a librarian. Librarians are cool. I see it in the chat. But what I describe to my son is that I tell him I'm a treasure hunter. My son, by the way, I don't know who's viewing, but my son's 8 years old, you know, and for the last 2 years, he's really, you know, had an interest in what the heck his parents do. And I've explained to him that I'm a treasure hunter, and I've explained to him that I go into people's basements and look for treasures, hidden treasures, which are history. I bring them in, I preserve them, and I, make them available for people to see. I've been quoted in some publications. I have a bio in another publication about North women, so he sees that, and hopefully, if it's not him, but just I like to basically share that with everyone, and that's the way I make it look cool, treasure hunter.
We have a question now from Matthew Van Horn, and he asks, what kind of online applications or programs or software are being used to catalog collections of Hispanic materials and make them accessible to the public for research? And he says, I think I recognized Archive Space during part of your presentation, which got me curious about that. And I also noticed you guys are now using Islandora as a platform too. So can you talk about the applications?
So that's it, right? Archive Space and Islandora. Before Islandora, we were working with Content DM. Excuse me. But those are it that I know of. I do not, I don't work with cataloging. I don't know about the cataloging books, but in terms of archives, you just hit them on the head. We did play around a little with, I forget what it's called, but it was basically it was similar to Content DM, but it was sort of a free version of Content DM. And if my colleague Huber is watching, he could throw it in the chat to remind me what that program was called. But you just mentioned them. It's Islandora that we are now doing, and they definitely noticed Archive Space. I think there was a first part of that question, kind of like where to find them.
Let's see. Matthew was asking what kind of, to make them accessible for public research.
Oh, okay.
So it's the Archive Space that you use for the cataloging, and Islandora is the discovery layer.
Digital.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's great. I remember, I'll put in a little plug for Islandora, because I think for Islandora and for Metro Libraries Consortium in New York, because I know I think you guys worked with them, right? That was right before I moved on.
That is exactly who we're working with, yeah.
Yeah, and they're great, and they provide services to help support Islandora implementations at libraries.
They definitely did, and actually, we were in the process of migrating. We started this sort of migration process from Content DM to Islandora last summer, and once that migration process finished, we were going to be trained. We were trained on how to basically work with Islandora and uploading our own collections, the XYZ. But the training started I think we had maybe 1 or 2 sessions before the shutdown, and then we shut down. So we took a pause, of course, but Metro was really, really great, and we held Zoom sessions, we were still trained and we were able to go on. So they were really, really helpful. They're great.
It's one of the benefits of being part of a consortium.
Right.
Sharing that expertise. Shane Smith, who is our public information officer, actually here at Jersey City Free Public Library, asks or says that NJHRIC has an amazing collection. Can you elaborate on how you incorporate diverse voices from diverse communities? And he notes that the Spanish-speaking community is very diverse in terms of origin, place of origin, racial identity, immigrant history, experience, cultural practices, etc. So can you talk a little bit about how you incorporate those diverse voices?
Yes, so that's actually a really great question. I'm glad it was asked. The HRIC has, is 3 tiers, right? I mentioned La Sala Panamericana, which is a completely Spanish language library for for everyone actually who's interested in reading Spanish language materials, right? You don't necessarily need to be Hispanic. However, the staff is, the room is staffed with Hispanic people to address anybody's concerns in their own language. Additionally, the computers there are configured to Spanish and complete with Spanish language keyboards, something that I had never seen before they were installed at the library, but obviously very necessary for the newly arrived immigrant who is used to the Spanish language keyboard. We also have, of course, the Puerto Rican Community Archive, and I just want to, with the Puerto Rican Community Archive, it is an archive of the Puerto Rican community, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it in my presentation, but the Puerto Rican community is the oldest Hispanic community in the state, and the largest Hispanic community in the state, the largest Hispanic community. So they're most at risk for losing their records, right? Those movers and shakers of the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, you know, they've since moved on, have passed away. Their records have been lost, you know, much like the 74 riots, only 25 years later, and we really don't have any materials reflective of that. The only materials we found on the North 74 riots were regarding, were the newspaper clippings that I mentioned, you know, so that's why the Puerto Rican Community Archive exists, you know, trying to rescue that community's history who is most at risk for losing their materials. Other Latino communities, we are documenting and preserving that history with the Hispanic reference collection. And that's where we have Latino oral histories that are interviews of Latinos of all ethnicities, right? All different Latinos. We also have, it is a bilingual research level collection. So it addresses Hispanics in New Jersey altogether and includes what I mentioned, the local newspaper collection, which again, is not just Puerto Rican, it covers all Latinos.
Thank you. Shane also asks or states that Jersey City has substantial linguistic cultural communities that are underrepresented in our shared history and public life. For example, we are the most diverse city in the US and one of the most diverse linguistically. And we have Arabic speakers, Hindi and Gujarati, and others. From your experience, are there aspects of NJHRIC's history that we here at the Jersey City Library can learn to offer resources for creating special collections or cultural centers that serve the unique communities that are here?
Wow, ask me again, what is the question? How do we?
Oh, what have you learned in establishing the NJHRIC that we might also be able to use here to represent our own unique communities?
Got it. Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, what I've learned is to include the community you want to work with, right? Like I mentioned, the Friends of the HRIC, they were the ones who did the fundraising to be able to hire someone to conduct the survey of the archive. It just so happened that, like I said, they created me. But I think it was really, really key to have someone from the community interested in their community, right? I came in, I look like them. I'm not some stranger, you know, I speak their language. And they felt a sort of comfort with me, you know, and then to allow me into their homes and look through all their personal stuff, you know, that takes a lot of comfort with a person, right? A lot of trust, and they were able to do that with me. I really think it had a lot to do with the fact that I am one of them, right? I am that person. Not just that, you know, some communities may not have that person, right? But including the community in that process is what's key. That's where you get the buy-in. You want to document this community, you get the community to come in and let you know what they need, you know, what those needs are before we go documenting whatever, you know, we want, right? So I think that's the short answer is definitely include the community you want to work with.
I think you make a really good point too in acknowledging that people are much more likely to work with people who look like us. We are more likely to work with people who look like us. And so I know we've been making every effort to hire people with second language skills here at Jersey City Free Public Library. It's important that the people who work in our libraries are representative of the communities that we serve.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's people who look like us, and you know, just you have to understand the culture, right? It takes that, right? Just to kind of really understand the culture and the people to be able to get in there and go through their personal things.
Yeah, you're asking them to give very personal things to you, right? And there has to be a level of trust there.
Yeah.
In order for them to feel comfortable doing that. The last question that we have is, and I think I know the answer to this, but is the information available to anyone researching the subject matter, or do you have to be a member of the Newark Public Library?
So yeah, good question. I don't know who threw that in there, but of course it's open to everyone. You do not have to be a member of the Newark Public Library. As I mentioned before, you know, in terms of our programming, all of our programs are free and open to the general public. Same with our collections, you know, they're free and open to the general public. So yes, it is open to anybody with access to the internet or telephone or email, right? Call us, email us, check us out online. Anyone can get information. Actually, on that note, I'm gonna tell you, one of the most interesting researchers we got were from Japan. And this was, oh, I don't even remember now how many years ago, but there were a Japanese couple doing research on Puerto Rico and what they called the oldest colony in the world. And as a result of their research in Puerto Rico, they were directed to the Center for Puerto Rican Studies at Hunter College, and then they visited the archive for resources on Puerto Ricans in New Jersey. So we get researchers from all over the world is what I'm telling you.
So I'm gonna let you go here in a second, but I also want to acknowledge that we have here at the Jersey City Free Public Library, we have Biblioteca Criolla.
Right.
It's located on the 4th floor of the main library. We are also in the process of renovating, and we're looking forward to early next year reopening our new space when we're allowed to do such things. And I think William Delgado and Patricia Vega, I think, are with us as well. And I hope that they will take a moment to reach out to you, if they haven't already, Yesenia, because we'd love to collaborate with you and help build the archive and work to advance Spanish language collections around the state as well. So thank you very much for your time. And it was really nice seeing you, and I miss you guys.
Yes, likewise.
So please, let's try to get together again when we're allowed to do that.
Sure will. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, take care. Thanks again.
You too. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.